Stories are the ills we should not pass on to the next generation. My name is Osadmebi, and every week I usually tell you a short story written by a Nigerian writer or author. But this is Series Week, where I tell you a story over the course of 2 to 7 consecutive days. Basically, however long it takes to complete the story. Series Week will occur once a quarter, and the stories featured will still be written by Nigerian writers and authors, but will either consist of a sequence of related episodes from one story or a set of stories linked by a common theme. That's the long and short of it. So without much ado, today's story is by Zubair Hassan Baba, and it's the third part of the story titled Along Came Love. Catch up on earlier episodes from this week for parts 1 and 2. Owerri, 1969. Ndubisi and I had been together for 7 months. The malnourished lady released him to me at the mention of Nne. "Make sure you hand him over to Philip Effiong," she instructed. "Who is Philip Effiong?" "The Vice President of our Republic." "Nigeria?" "Biafra," she chuckled. "No wonder he is special." "Yes. Nne, rest her soul, said he is Ndubisi's father." "Okay. So where will I find him?" "North of Owerri. Tell them Blue-Eyed Raven sent you. They will understand." More like dried-up malnourished raven, I thought. And so my journey had begun with the 10-year-old Ndubisi. We traveled by foot and we traveled by bus, whichever was safe. We made the sun our shelter and took solace in the light of the stars. Sometimes I carried him on my shoulders, and sometimes on my back, like the toddler he wasn't. He never talked much, aside from the occasional "nyemmiri" or "nyemamri." He was an awful travel partner. I shielded him as best as I could from the war's ravaging hands. They dare not touch my precious prize. I was a delivery man, ready to fend off any foe till I got my package safely to its destination. Enugu to Owerri was less than a 4-hour car journey, but it took us 7 months to travel the distance. War can be very brutal, the catalyst for mass destruction. It could permanently alter a map. It had the power to elongate distances. It could disrupt plans. It could do anything but good. The Nigerian forces had taken Enugu and were on the verge of taking Owerri. Their pomposity was met with stiff opposition from the scanty Biafran forces, and they were forced to retreat to their shells. Ndubisi and I often had to hide when both sides traded gunpowder. One particular harrowing day, as the earth rumbled beneath us as we crouched low in our hideout, Ndubisi asked, "Nke a ọ bụ njedebe anyị?" I nodded my head, then shook it hard, then lost control of my head as it alternated between nods and shakes. I had no idea what he had just asked me. Nri, Miri, and a few generic phrases in between. That was the full extent of my Igbo. He chuckled at my show of ignorance. Watching him smile was delightful. Ndubisi was special. "I asked if this was the end for us," he said in clear English. I was shocked. I had spent months concocting some form of sign language so we could communicate. And all the while, he could speak English. I shook my head and answered, "No, it is not. I have lived through worse." He smiled, his teeth surprisingly white and intact, but tiny. His smile was infectious. I smiled back in return. No doubt I was getting fond of the boy. Ndubisi was love, and love had found me. Owerri, 1970. Getting into the north of Owerri was hellish. Finding the Major General was a lot more. We scavenged from one town to another. Philip Effiong had suddenly become a ghost no one had seen. He was everywhere and he was nowhere. I realized it was a ploy to keep the number 2 citizen out of harm's way. Can someone tell these Philistines I meant no harm? The black-eyed raven sent me for Christ's sake. But no one seemed to care. They had never heard the name before. So I continued my search. One day, we came across a fraction of heavily armed Biafran soldiers. They had a few white mercenaries in their midst. Their faces held fury. I kept my cool. I dared not seek their attention. "Uncle Emeka!" Ndubisi suddenly called. I instinctively stretched out my hands to place it over his mouth, just as one of the soldiers, the one whose face contained everything but warmth, looked in our direction. "Let the boy go," Uncle Emeka said. He cocked his rifle before aiming at me. "I said let the boy go," he repeated. I wasn't even aware my palms were still on Ndubisi's mouth. I quickly detached my hand. I saw the look the soldiers gave me. It was trouble. Their hands held onto their rifles tightly. A single mistake and I knew I would be gone. I had to tread softly. "It's not what you..." The words were barely out of my mouth when the butt of a local rifle struck my head. I heard Ndubisi cry, "No!" just before everything went black. I woke up, stark naked and shivering, tied to an iroko tree. My limbs hurt, and the iroko seemed to be sapping whatever heat my body was generating. I saw my captors, whining and dining around the fire they had made. Under the moonlit sky, they traded stories, a fine blend of the factual and the exaggerated. They laughed and made merry. They told tales of their exploits. They boasted of their number of kills. They talked about how Ojukwu betrayed them, how he ran with both feet meeting the back of his head when the Nigerian force broke through the resistance. They talked about the end of the war. I spotted Ndubisi sitting forlorn in a corner. Our eyes met, and I beckoned him over with my head. As he came close, I saw tears in his eyes. It broke my heart. He looked like he had been crying a long time, and those barbarians in Biafran uniform were not concerned. "Why are you crying?" I asked. "Uncle Emeka, he's a bad man." "Why do you say that?" "Because he beat my second daddy." I was confused for a moment, and then it dawned on me. I was his second daddy. I was deeply moved, and tears came rolling down. We had been each other's companion for close to a year. I knew we had grown fond of each other, but it never crossed my mind that he had seen me as his second daddy. I was touched. I loved this boy. Seeing my tears, he rushed at me and hugged me tightly. his feeble hands wrapped around my waist, his head on my stomach. Unable to hug him back, I cried silently. I loved this boy deeply. Ndbisi, what? Uncle Emeka said. They had stopped their bloodthirsty tales. No, leave my second daddy alone, Ndbisi cried, clinging to me even tighter. He is not your father. He is a Nigerian, an enemy of Biafra, one of the white mercenaries said. They dragged Ndubisi away from me and he wailed, but no one paid attention to a 10-year-old boy crying over a Nigerian hostage. That is what I had become. Not a fellow indigene, or a fellow African, or a fellow black man, not even a fellow human. Is this the reward I was promised? I asked.
Were you expecting a treasure in return?
Uncle Emeka taunted. Take me to see Philip F. Young.
Why? Do you think it will be any different?
Indeed. Will he be any different? Will any Biafran be different given the circumstances? Will any Biafran soldier still have an ounce of humanity left? Does war depreciate the benevolence in us? Does paying kindness with evil depict bravery? And has one good turn ceased to be deserving of another? I refused to regret the dying wish I had naively honored. As guns cocked before me, and before the horrified-looking 10-year-old boy I had come to know and love, I looked him in the eye and said, Ndubisi, do not tread the path of your fathers. A spray of Biafran bullets came flying. My reward. Zubair Hassan Baba is a talented historic fiction writer residing in Abuja. With a recently completed master's degree in international relations from the University of Abuja, he is now seeking to make his mark in the academic world. In 2021, he was honored with the prestigious Bada Muria Writing Fellowship, powered by the MacArthur's Foundation, further solidifying his reputation as a rising literary voice. Beyond his award-winning historical fiction, Zubair has also authored several other acclaimed works. You can connect with Zubair on Facebook at Zubair Hassan Baba, on X at Zubair Day for You, or via email at hassanzubair259@gmail.com. Details and links will be in the episode description. If you've got a story you would like to be featured on this podcast, or a published book you want to make into an audiobook, send an email to info@osadumebi.com, or send me a message at Osadumebi on either Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or X. I look forward to collaborating with you. And if you've enjoyed this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell someone, everyone, that stories are a good escape for a few minutes each week.